Steven Seagal was one of the biggest action stars of the late 80s and early 90s. It's easy to forget that now because of some of the self parody he made with his later films. But he had an early run of movies, late 80s and early 90s, that were very good. One of those movies was this one, Marked for Death. It came out in 1990 in the middle of kind of his run of noteworthy movies. Now, in this series, mm, now I call this series Does It Hold Up? Where I look at movies from generations past to see if they were released today, how well they would hold up. So, what I'm gonna start out with is my normal kind of non-spoiler review of the movie, give my grade, but then also after that, go a little bit in the spoiler territory, not a full deep dive, but a little bit in the spoiler territory, and talk a bit about some stuff that was kind of funny or interesting about the movie that I want to share, including some talk about the poster behind me, which I think is also kind of funny. So, like I always do, let's talk first a little bit about the people that made the movie. The director is a man named Dwight Little. Now, he directed a bunch of stuff both before and after this. Notably, one of the better Halloween sequels, Halloween 4, one of my personal favorites of the Halloween movies. He also, much later in the aughts, made a movie version of the video game Tekken, though I never saw that one. The screenwriting was done by a screenwriting duo of Michael Grias and Mark Victor. It's most notable that they're the screenwriters for the original movie Poltergeist, directed by Steven Spielberg. Now, generally speaking, the Mark for Death story slash plot is pretty silly and ridiculous. It starts off with Steven Seagal, I think in Mexico, as a DEA agent. His character's name is like John Hawkins or something. I'm just gonna call him Steven Seagal because the name is very generic. It's John. Well, I'm just gonna call him Steven Seagal because calling him John is just kind of stupid. It's Steven Seagal. So Steven Seagal is in Mexico. He's a DEA agent. He's got a partner, and they're involved doing drug busting stuff. And during the course of their time in Mexico, which runs a little bit long, and one of the biggest flaws of the movie in terms of pacing is they spend a little bit too much time with the Mexico sequence. But anyway, during their time during this attempted drug bust or drug transaction, his partner gets killed, and he has to kill a woman who was pretending to be like a prostitute, but actually was armed and shot the dude when he didn't see it coming. And so Steven Seagal comes back to America. He quits the DEA because he's so heartbroken over shooting this assassin slash prostitute. And then he goes back to his hometown in Illinois. And there it's been besieged by a Jamaican drug gang. And but he doesn't want to be involved in it. And, he's a friend of his who he knows from like high school. And the guy's like a high school coach or something that he knows from back home. And he's like, oh, don't worry about it, man. It's not your problem, et cetera, et cetera. Because he's so guilt-ridden over what happened in Mexico. And he goes to a priest. They show a shot. There's a confessional scene where he's talking to the priest and saying, oh, I've become that which I once despised. And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, man, you shot someone who shot your partner in self-defense. Like, what? You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't go and you didn't turn the jigsaw and start torturing people or something because they wronged you. You didn't do anything crazy, man. You're just being a DEA agent. So I thought it was a forced kind of dramatic arc for him that doesn't really work. And it's cast aside pretty quickly. But they spend like 15, 20 minutes setting this all up only for it to go away pretty quickly. But the plot isn't why you go see this movie. And that's just say that up front, but that's the kind of silliness that takes place during the first act. And it doesn't really get any better from there from a plot standpoint. So the inciting event of the movie is him and that friend of his, played by kind of a gaming and sci-fi favorite, Keith David. He plays this like buddy high school coach who stayed home while he went off to be in DEA. And they're at drinks at some bar. And there's this big subplot where there are these like kind of mafioso guys that are trying to do a deal with the Jamaican drug dealers. And I guess they don't say the right thing. It's not even entirely clear what is going on, but things don't work out between them. And so the Jamaicans decide to take it out on them, and they like do a hit, and they go in that bar and they shoot up the bar, kill the mafia guys. Steven Seagal is there, and of course, just shooting and people are in danger. So of course he's going to act. So he steps up and he's protecting people, and he's disarming. He beats one of the Jamaican dudes up, and that's basically the exciting event for the entire movie. And the whole movie after that is about the Jamaicans essentially having beef with Steven Seagal and going after him for that incident. That's the whole plot of the movie. There's nothing really else going on. It becomes it's us or them. After that little issue in the bar where I think Steven Seagal doesn't kill anybody. He disarms somebody, beats somebody else up. I think they get arrested maybe, or they just run away and escape. But that's it. Like, he doesn't even kill anybody. And Jamaican gangsters like, oh man, we can't let this stand. This guy, who is this guy? Jack Hawthorne. Let's call him Jack Hawthorne. I remember his name. This John guy, he's terrible. We got to do something about him. Like, you can't, he got the leader guy, Screwface, is one of the best things about the movie, is Screwface, the villain. And Screwface, it goes up to him, like, gets in the guy's grill, like, how you gonna let this dude punk you, man? Da 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 da. Okay, so he does that, and that triggers the kind of the movie to go forward in Jamaica. But in general, it's not just that guy though. It's not like that one guy goes off. The whole Jamaican drug dealing organization and Steven Seagal go to war. That's what the rest of the movie is about. But it's all triggered off of that fight, that shootout in the drug in the bar, which accomplishes what the Jamaicans set out to do. They set out to kill the mafioso guys who did not like the deal they were going to make with them. They do that, but because this guy beat up some of them, they've got to go to war with this guy and his family. So that's the premise of the movie. And the real question is, does the action and fighting work? Because that's why you come to see Steven Seagal movies. That's why you came to see all of them. I think Under Siege 1 and 2 are the real exception, where they actually are movies with real plots and to have stuff that actually connects together and are more than just Steven Seagal beating people up. This is not. Mark for Death is one of the Steven Seagal is beating a bunch of people up. And the question is it fun to watch and entertaining? And the answer is, for the most part, yes. I think some of his Aikido moves, where he's just kind of sliding out the way and throwing dudes in the walls and out of the way, some of it gets kind of silly. It doesn't pop as well as it did in 1990 with all the other stuff we've seen as far as martial arts. But there are still some like decent gun sequences, decent combat sequences. There's a really good, the third act, there's a really good one-on-one fight. And the other thing about this movie that I give him a lot of credit for is, after that kind of slow opening, the movie runs. Boom, 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 boom. It keeps going, keeps moving plot-wise. You got 4 or 5 minute scenes, and it keeps you on your toes after that. It does not a whole lot. There's one sequence though, maybe 5-10 minutes. They go to Jamaica at one point. There's a little bit of background that's given in Jamaica to kind of give some color to it, so that the Jamaican gangsters thing isn't just a trope, that there's actually some thought into that. Kind of like, there's a point made about, this is just what some people are doing. This isn't who we are. And I think that was very good, because there were a lot of movies in the 80s and 90s that treated certain ethnicities as just fodder for being villains. And this movie could be said to be doing that, but it tries to be more respectful of the fact that, the Jamaicans are a rich, beautiful culture, and these gangsters that happen to be drug dealers who are Jamaican don't represent that. And so they kind of make a point of that at some point. I think that was actually good that they did that, even though it slows the movie down for a spell in the second act. As for the acting in it, there's some good acting and there's some not so good acting. Steven Seagal as an actor is not particularly good. There's an exception with his Under Siege movies, especially the first one, but both of them, he's okay. He's actually kind of lighthearted at times, and they somehow, the writing or he himself is able to actually perform that character with a degree of charisma. This is more so just the regular old scouring, depressed, angry Steven Seagal we got in most of the other movies. And it's fine. It doesn't really detract from the movie. It's kind of the nominal Steven Seagal, but it doesn't really add anything to it either. Keith David's good. The main villain, Screwface, he's really good. And, that's covers a lot of the movie, is having it's a couple of good performances, so that you've got some good acting to go along with, as I said, action sequences that are, some are better than others, but are generally entertaining. And that's what you get in terms of acting. There's certainly some dated placeholder acting that doesn't hold up as well, but you've got some good stuff there too. So what's my rating? Well, I can't say that Mark for Death was even recommendable in 1990. Now it certainly isn't. However, I think it's still well within the realm of a decent movie. And so I would give it a 5. I think that the third act is good. There's some good action sequences in the second act. The big thing that harms it is just a slow first act and some of the interpersonal stuff with him and his family that's kind of stale. Just the first act is not particularly good, but the second and third act are both pretty solid. And I think if you have watched any Steven Seagal movies and kind of enjoyed them, this isn't a bad one to check out if you have the time. It's certainly not one of his disasters he would make later. Now we get to the fun part. So, like I said, The inciting event to the movie was Steven Seagal's character beating up some of the Jamaican drug dealers during their hit on the mafia guys in the bar. So after that, Screwface gets in the face of one of the guys and says, "This guy punked you. What you gonna do about it?" Oh, yeah, I didn't mention that too. The Jamaican accents are really heavy, and sometimes it's hard to understand dudes. Uh, it doesn't really keep you from enjoying the movie, but it was something where I was like, did they do this on purpose? Why they couldn't have lightened this up a little bit? Because it's basically English. It's just a different, you could certainly, I think maybe they deferred to the actual, because I think there were some actual Jamaican dudes playing the Jamaicans. And I think that maybe they deferred to them in the accent and said, just do something natural and say, let them do something natural. And you don't really, it doesn't cause you to not understand what's happening. But it's kind of funny that this movie where I'm sure there's those screenwriters, those guys, Michael and Mark, did not write that Jamaican dialogue that those guys were talking half of what they were saying in the movie. That was just people ad libbing in their native dialect of English, rather than actually something written by the director. I mean, by the screenwriters. Anyway, so uh, they said, okay. And so what they do is, oh, so Screwface gets in his face. Oh man, you let him punk you. What are we gonna do about it? So those guys go in and do a drive-by on Steven Seagal's family's house. So it's got his sister and his sister's kids there. So they drive by, they shoot up the house. One of the boys, the son, like his nephew, gets shot. And so they take the nephew to the hospital. And of course, the sister blames him for it, even though he didn't do anything. He literally didn't do anything. I guess she just blames him because he's a DEA agent, but he literally didn't do anything. She's mad at him. She's also crying on his shoulder, but then she kind of pulls away from him and cries on somebody else's shoulder. I thought that was messed up. It's not uncommon, but or I didn't feel like it was ridiculous, but it was just kind of funny to me because I'm like, he literally didn't do anything. He's just standing there scowling like he does. And then he comes back and he looks around the house and he sees this symbol on the floor of the house. Sometime later in the movie, like 10 minutes later. Anyway, he goes to visit her and he's like, "What can you tell me about this Jamaican gang?" And it's funny thing about this movie too is they play up the Jamaican gang like they're like these big deal. But they also seem so petty for going after Steven Seagal and this the leader of the whole thing. It's like Pablo Escobar. This whole thing is worried about this one retired DEA agent who beat up one of his goons during a successful hit. How does that make any sense? It doesn't. Anyway, so he's talking to the investigative reporter and she says, "Oh, that symbol means your family's been marked for death," which is a great title for a movie, mind you, especially when it ties into the mark in the movie. Good job with that. So that means your family's marked for death. It seems like, "Oh no, my family's in danger." And he hops in his car and drives back to his sister's house at full speed. I'm sitting there, and then they cut to the sister who's gone back into the shot up house and is taking a bath or a shower or something, just minding her business. The kids aren't there. So the kids, they take it somewhere else. Like they know, for some reason, instinctually know the kids are in danger, but they leave the sister at the house. So she's at the house. The guys are creeping up on her. They get her as he's driving. They capture her. And then, of course, they decide to hold a ritual in the house while Steven Seagal is driving on his way in the whatever little dinky car he has, like something like a Yugo or not a Yugo, Yugo. I don't know, whatever it was, like some kind of Nissan Accord from the 80s or something. He's just driving down and they're like, they're setting up candles and they're painting stuff on her, and the dude and Screwface, the leader, the Pablo Escobar of the whole thing, of this whole great Jamaican drug enterprise, is there going to personally ritually sacrifice the sister of a retired DEA agent who beat up one or two of his goons in a successful hit in a bar some odd days earlier. After they done shot up the house and wounded one of the children. I guess that wasn't enough. They need to go after and do more. Although I think in between that he might have done something back. So I'm not sure. This might have been, but they marked his house for death right after they shot it up. Like they came back. I think they bashed it up. That's what happened. They left. They shot the house up. Then everybody left. Then the Jamaicans came in and I guess smashed the house up, drew the sign on it, and then they came back and then the person took pictures. So Steven Seagal may have never even seen that. Well, no, he said he came back and he saw it. And then he said, "What is this?" She said, "Oh, they're marked for death." So he comes back, he beats him up, Screwface runs off. But that whole sequence didn't make any sense. Like, why is Screwface there? Why is this woman back at this house that's been shot up and smashed up and people drawing stuff on it? Looks like just some gang went through it. It'd be a Jamaican drug dealer that's not, it's wrecked. Who would want to live? Who would want to try to go back there and live in that house? Where her kids at? It's nighttime. It's like it's daytime. Obviously, the kids are somewhere else safe. Why is she there? There's no explanation. This doesn't make any sense. Um, Decent action scene, but it doesn't make any sense. Now, one interesting question I had was, is voodoo in the movie real? Because it's a movie, so you got these Jamaican drug dealers are definitely making reference to voodoo and to like burning effigies and doing that sort of stuff. So definitely references to voodoo in the movie. And there's some interesting stuff early on in it. So uh there's first of all, there's play about Screwface being in more places at once or being able to almost move too fast for sight. And so it's like, is he using voodoo? And then there's a woman. Oh, the gangsters, reason why they shot up the gangsters is because one of the gangsters goes to this woman who practices voodoo, gives them a picture of Screwface and says, like, mess him up or kill him or something, and pays her a big stack of money. So he pays her and she lights incense and I think cuts her own hand and does a whole ritual. And then Screwface somewhere else wakes up like he's been hurt. And that makes it suggest like the movie says voodoo is real, right? But on the other hand, he wasn't really hurt. Like he felt it, but didn't really do anything. And so then next time you see her, they found her. So somehow they figured out who she was. Although how many voodoo priestesses are there in this small town in Illinois? So probably wasn't hard to find her. And they find her and they kill her. And ultimately, what she did didn't do anything, and they just stabbed her. So that's not really anything fancy about that. And the answer really is no. That I think the movie plays with this idea that voodoo could be real, but ultimately nobody does anything supernatural in this. Everything can be explained by the simple machinations of these drug dealers trying to take over and hurt people. But they're generally just ultimately stabbing people. They might paint on them first or burn some incense or something, but they're in the end, they're doing knives and guns. It's like everybody else. The last thing I wanted to mention is there are actually two hip hop references that I did not expect in the movie. Unfortunately, I can only quote one of them. And at some point in the movie, Screwface is like whispering to somebody. I can't remember who. I think it might be maybe the mafioso guys. And he whispers to him, he says, "Everybody wants heaven, but nobody wants dead." And I said, I know that line because it's a line from a song that Nas did over a decade later. Um, it was in reference to the movie Blood Diamonds, and he used that line, "Everybody wants heaven, but nobody wants dead. Everybody wants diamonds without the bloodshed." And I just thought it was a line he came up with or something. I had no idea it came from Marked for Death, this action movie from 1990. There's also a Biggie Smalls line. Notorious B.I.G. is more popularly known because there's a band called Biggie Smalls when he was coming up that would not let him use the name. That's why all his albums always say Notorious B.I.G., but he always refers to himself as Biggie Smalls. Anyway, Biggie Smalls also has a line in the song that is taken from a line of dialogue. I think it's another one of lines of Screwface's too, but I couldn't remember which one it was. Maybe someone else who saw it who can post in the comments if they know what I'm talking about. But there's two unexpected hip hop references that I saw in this movie. Now, the last thing I want to do, and I need to turn on my monitor to do this, is I want to talk about this poster behind me, which I think is kind of funny. So this poster behind me, and it's going to be on my right. At the top, it says, "They attacked his family." That's true. They say they killed his partner. That is not true. His partner was killed by like Colombians or something in Latin America. And I'm guessing Mexico, but it was somewhere in Latin America. They were not killed by the Jamaican drug dealers. That's not telling the truth. And then it says, of course, they made the wrong guy very, very angry. Now Steven Seagal is marked for death. And I love the bottom line. I gotta move my arm. He's a good cop in a bad mood. I think a bad mood is a bit of an understatement. But this poster generally is excellent. I have to cut it off to make it kind of fit this horizontal view, but it's got, this may be the best movie poster of all of Steven Seagal's movie posters. And when I cut this up and edit this for a long form video, I'll probably post that here so you can see the actual full poster. But it's an excellent post. Thank you for watching my video about Marked for Death. If you got this far, please consider liking and subscribing, and continue to look for more videos from Low Key Classic Movies. Have a good evening.